Philipp Mартин, который является бизнес-консультантом, интернет-предпринимателем и преподавателем делового английского. Он расскажет о своей очень-очень интересной авторской методике преподавания английского, именно делового английского по аутентичным материалам.
Hi everybody, nice to meet you all. Who here speaks B1 English or better? Okay, who feels they're A1 or A2? Okay, so B1 or better, that's quite not bad. Okay, so who in this auditorium actively sells English services to people? Okay, all right, and who sells business English services to people? Okay, just curious about that, it's interesting. Okay, so B1 interesting. Okay, so I'm here to talk about what I call business builder English. Let's see, am I doing this right? Yeah. So just quickly about me. I have a 4-year degree in marketing, a 4-year degree in chemical engineering, and I was formerly responsible for training in the marketing and sales department of the world's biggest biotech company. Not exclusively responsible for it, just partly responsible. And I've written this book now called 32 Secrets of Psychological Pricing and Financial Negotiation. Right, so that's the book cover. We got like 290 pages, 4th revision. I hope it's out soon. I'm getting tired of working on it. So here's, when I escaped the United States, and I say escape because I've written a whole other book about what I think about the United States, for Europe, I started actually teaching a little bit because I felt it was like my ticket for mobility to see the world. And I started doing that a little bit, and I've really enjoyed that, and this included several semesters at the Polytechnic University in Ulm, Germany. But I do a lot of things, and right now, like one of the biggest things I'm doing is my music and sound business, and that is taking so much energy out of everything that actually this presentation is not as good as the Native Speakers Cafe presentation in terms of the science behind it. I just didn't have the time. I've been so busy putting my biggest proposals ever for this other stuff that I haven't had time to develop this. By the way, Native Speakers Cafe is one of the greatest English experiences I've ever had the joy of experiencing myself. It's a really interesting thing. You should try it out. So anyway, business English. So what I learned when I came to Germany and I was starting to teach business English was that, do you want to say anything? Translate?
I'm thinking that I probably should, yes. So
okay, go ahead.
I'll just stop you for a second.
Sorry. Go ahead.
У меня вопрос. Крис достаточно бегло, быстро говорит, и, соответственно, у меня вопрос, ну, как бы вот, требуется вообще перевод? Кому требуется перевод? Никому. Okay, Chris, sorry, Philip, we are not, I don't think we'll be translating you, so just go ahead. Yeah.
All right, so many of the classes I was teaching were business English, and but what the problem was, I was like, coming from training in the marketing and sales department of the world's biggest biotech company, I was like, oh my God, this stuff is so boring. There's no way they're learning anything for their business with this, and some of the material was just awful, and they were learning how to set up fake appointments and fake meetings, and everything was fake, and there was very little motivation. So I was like, I have to do something about this. I'm going to start trying to teach them some really interesting stuff that actually helps their business at the same time. So at times that even the business English looked like torture for these people. So I felt like there was a solution, and I did something that I called it business builder English now, and it incorporates lessons from 20 years of corporate training and research, and stuff from my book and my forthcoming books and all that kind of stuff. So like this lesson structure, and I'm a little bit worried about my time here. Who am I supposed to be watching for my time? Okay, right. So the lesson structure looks, like I often go in, we give a spelling and word quiz based on everything that we've been reading. We do pronunciation drills, grammar lesson 20 to 50% of days, not too often, but here's like one of the key things is business book reading. So we read really serious, interesting business books that most business people have never even seen before. Like for instance, I won't go into that, it'll take too long. But note-taking on pronunciation, what I do is I sit down, when I have time to do this, and I'm really having less and less time to do this, I take notes on pronunciation and vocabulary issues separately, dictation of summary and reading. Also, I often dictate and do a summary of the reading that we just did. Student writes summary with assistance. And so, like, for instance, one of my students I'm going to talk about right now, his name is Michael, and he was, I think, AA2 plus when I kind of met him, and he runs the Russian branch of the world's biggest explosives company, and he has to learn English as soon as possible. I wanted to offer him something completely different, which is something where you'd actually learn how to use English in a real business context. So we would develop, what we do is hold on, let's see here. Oh, more things here. Student is exposed to ideas that would almost certainly never have heard of before. Really, I'm amazed how few people have heard of any of the stuff in my book on pricing psychology. Construction of presentations and marketing communications using new principles. Like I said, this is not the perfect presentation. I just haven't had the time. Marketing communications and image action plans and implementation reports. So like we talk about, the psychology of pricing and how they can implement it, and they have to, they work on implementing this, and then they come back to me and we discuss how these things are actually helping them, or how they could work, and how they can develop alternatives to get more sales. So examples of topics covered: 32 principles of psychological pricing, business science, science of influence and persuasion, science of decision making, science of corporate communications, sales science, the 22 immutable laws of branding. That's like everybody's favorite book when I bring that in. It's like, oh my God, why haven't I ever seen a book like this before? You can all pick it up yourself. It's a cool book. I highly recommend it. One of the best business books I've ever seen. So here's just one example of the things I teach people that's different than creating a fake appointment, So here's like a most interesting result. This is one of my favorite studies from business science. There's a guy named Dan Ariely, and he specializes in behavioral economics. And he, at the end of each semester at university, he brings all his graduate students in, and they have an auction, and he auctions off a bottle of wine, a box of chocolates, and a few other things. And he says, okay, now everybody, first, write down the last 2 digits of your phone number. And so they write the last 2 digits of their phone number down. And he says, now think, would you be willing to pay that for this bottle of wine? And so they think, okay, would I be willing to pay that? And he says, now write down your bid for this bottle of wine. And so they write that down. And now what's interesting is, do you think that writing down the last 2 digits of your phone number would have an effect on how much you pay for this bottle of wine in dollars, how much you bid for it? And I don't know, this auditorium's too big to ask the question. So most students say no. Oh, it's an interesting font because I didn't embed my fonts. Okay, great. So, but this is the actual result. This is really interesting. This is like just one example of the things that I work to bring across to business people. Look at the effect here. So people who had a high last 2 digits of their phone number, for instance, for this, let's say the very top curve there, for the cordless keyboard, they paid 3 times as much for this cordless keyboard as the people who had the last 2 digits of their phone number that were low. And this is something called anchoring. And the others are all like, 250% increase. And this is like one of the most important effects in business, and virtually nobody knows about it. It's crazy when I do these talks on this particular topic. So if you're not using anchoring to your benefit, you're missing out on you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And when I talk to people about this, I think, oh my gosh, they've left so much money on the table in the last few years. But anyway, this is the one of the things that I talk to people about. And I just don't have time to do this in 15 minutes here today, but later on in the workshop, I'm going to be talking about this and perhaps how you can raise your own sales with decoys, anchoring, and that kind of stuff. So here we have, increases of between 122% and 229% just because they asked them to put a number into their head first. Right. Oh, Brut Effect. Oh, that's an interesting study. That's another interesting study. There was somebody that discovered that if throughout the semester and I'm thinking about using this in my English teaching because it's all part of the business science thing. They discovered that in their teaching that when they sprayed, they had 2 classes, I think it was chemistry. And before chemistry, the teacher, with one group of classes, he would always spray Brut on the walls before they came in for the lesson. And the other classes, he didn't spray anything. And then the day of the test, he sprayed Brut on all the walls. And he discovered that people who had associated Brut with their learning throughout the semester had significantly better scores because of the way that the human brain creates memories is much more powerful when you introduce smells. So, and hopefully good smells. So I'm actually thinking about using this in my classes now, just to see what happens, because it will help them increase their ability to create memories. So anyway, what people have to say. So this is Michael Overchenko with all the work that we've done now. I've been working with him for a year and a half. He called this Precisely What I Need. And honestly, if you've got like a portfolio of products you're selling to people, if you come to my workshop later, I'll talk to you exactly why you need to have like a high-end product in your portfolio because you don't increase prices. The best way to get sales is not to, or to increase your sales is really not to increase prices. It's always to introduce a high-end option because you should see, in the talk later, I'll show you exactly what happens. You need a high-end option, and so you need to consider introducing like a high-end business option into your business or into your English portfolio and the products you sell. But so anyway, he's really happy with this. People at Dixie called it extremely useful and enjoyable for everyone. And I don't know. I think that's about. I'm out of time, aren't I? Okay, that's fine. All right. So what I've really enjoyed doing over the years is really working with people to help them increase their interest in English and facilitate their learning by actually making it relevant to their business, helping them work on these skills at the same time. So now that I have time, let me go back through here and just talk about the lesson structure a bit more. So business book reading, that's one of the things, if I bring in a really interesting business book for these people, the CEOs of these companies, right away they know, oh my God, this is not just a book where I'm going to be making, or a lesson where I'm going to be making fake appointments. They're always engaged. If I bring in these good books, they're highly engaged. And actually what's nice about it is it's obviously like it's a premium kind of teaching. So it's a nice thing to have in your portfolio if you're trying to sell. It's extremely useful in terms of the decoy effect and anchoring effect. And it's just something you should be doing because otherwise you're leaving money on the table. But so after we do this reading, I used to, but like I said, increasingly I have less and less time for this stuff. I used to sit next to them and take notes on their spelling and word use, and then I would create this list every night and go in the next day with the spelling quiz that we would be doing. Grammar book usage wasn't too high because everybody knows Murphy, the Blue Murphy, right? And I tend not to do that because I feel like lots of people out there can work out of Murphy, and I don't want to waste their time if I'm charging them what I'm charging them. I don't want to be going through the Blue Book because the Blue Book is something they can hire many people to do. So, and I'm always worried about them getting their money's worth. So, note-taking on pronunciation, vocabulary, dictation of, so then what we do is at the end of each chapter, and I like the books with short chapters, I actually sit there and I dictate like a summary. So I'm looking through the book and I dictate a summary to them because right now, for instance, Michael, he's working on improving his spelling and he's doing a great job in getting better and better and better, but the dictation has been essential. And then after we do the dictation, which is a page or two, which is a summary of what we just read, where he's learned something, and we have often very interesting business discussions about what's come out of this and whether it's useful or not. For instance, we also in some of these chapters there are exercises that come out of some of these books, which are really interesting exercises that are thought-provoking on how they could sell better. Let's see, dictation of summary. Student writes summary with assistance. Yeah, right. So then I help them write a summary with assistance, and that seems to be extremely useful in terms of in improving his engagement. And like I said, the whole thing is to facilitate a higher level of learning by actually giving them serious brain food to think about and not just some of those horrible lessons that I used to have to give. So like I said, they're exposed to ideas they would almost never would have never heard of before. Like for instance, in one case, when I asked my students to tell me which of two sales setups would sell the most pool tables, if you go, I'll talk about this in my workshop later, but which way to sell pool tables from the most expensive to the least expensive or least expensive to most expensive, like 95% of them, CEOs and everything, they choose the wrong one that actually costs 43% of sales in all the studies done. And so I'm working on trying to help them understand these aspects of business. And like I said, I don't expect the Cambridge University English Press to come out with business books that actually teach business, but I think it's extremely useful, and I feel I've seen much better results because of the immersive nature of it. So anyway, right. So that's me, Martin Associates, Philipp Christopher Martin, businesssciencespecialist.com, and if you want to talk to me about any of this. Alochka, she's my personal assistant. She's great. I wish I could say, but she's great. So anyway, yeah, but there's my personal phone. And seriously, I've had so much work to do in the last 2 weeks deploying my music and sound products that I'm going insane. And unfortunately, this presentation wasn't as good as the last one. But anyway, I think I'm done. And I'd like to thank you all for listening. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. And I hope to see you in my workshop because I'm going to talk about some very interesting things about pricing that you can use. I think anybody who's selling English services, yourself or somebody else, you need to know this stuff. And I'll be talking about that a little bit in the pricing, in the workshop later. Okay? Very good?
Philip, yes, thank you very much.
All right.